This program documents actual homicide investigations. Criminal charges are often dropped or reduced, and all suspects shown are presumed innocent unless proven guilty.
I was 3, and she filled a void in my life. Just loud, door knock. And I heard my granny give that treacherous scream that comes from a mom.
The window of the driver's seat was down. They also see a woman slumped over. There's blood near her head.
She was sitting in the car with her head resting on a pillow, as if she was making herself comfortable.
He was very flashy, very talkative, over the top.
She realizes, oh boy, what have I got myself involved with? Who is this man?
He has killed before, and he can kill again.
She said, I want to tell you about one other crime, and this one involves 4 murders.
That's a bloodbath.
He thought that this was a good payback.
The small, quiet community of La Habra sits half an hour southwest of Los Angeles.
It's 7.1 square miles. It has industrial areas, commercial areas, and residential areas. It's basically a family community, and it has every single food restaurant you can imagine. People grow up in La Habra and they stay in La Habra.
Around 5:45 a.m. on Wednesday, November 12, 2003, a group of workers report for a job at Morgan Metals, located in a La Habra industrial park.
They saw a car backed in. There wasn't a car that they recognized as belonging to one of their employees, so that seemed out of the ordinary to the workers.
The window of the driver's seat was down. They also see a woman slumped over. But the craziest thing was there's blood near her head and she's on a pillow. And the car is still running.
One of the managers walks over to have a look at this car. He looks and sees this woman in the front seat and sees blood, and immediately determines that this person appears to be dead, and he's the one that calls the police. And the EMTs came and checked her and determined that she was in fact deceased.
And that's when they saw at least 1 gunshot wound.
The first question that comes up is, was this a suicide? She's in the vehicle by herself, but there was no gun located, which made it unusual to assume that this was a suicide since there was no gun.
So by the time the police got there, they knew they were dealing with a homicide and a gunshot wound victim.
They needed to identify her, so they saw that she had a purse. Inside that purse was still her wallet, and in the wallet they found her ID. It said that she was 22-year-old Anika Edmondson of Compton, California. There are so many questions here because not only is this an industrialized area, but it's really an isolated area, and it's kind of the perfect place to dump a body. The possibilities were endless. They just didn't know.
Anika Edmondson was born on June 6, 1981. She was raised in Compton, California, by her mother and a tight-knit extended family.
Anika, aka Nika is what we all refer to her as, was a daughter of 4, the youngest, the baby girl. Going down the line, there was another sibling after her, so she finally became a big sister. Growing up, she was literally the light of the house, the boss maker, as I've been told anyways. Definitely courageous and just a ball of energy.
As a teenager, Anika landed in hot water.
She had some troubles with some girls, and they told her, we're gonna be waiting for you after work on a particular day. Anika had carried some razors in her hand, some box cutters, so to say. And when the girls came for her, she was ready to, defend herself. And she ended up slicing one of the girls' face. And when it went to the court system, they ended up taking her away for about 4 years. But in hindsight, everything happens for a reason. That's when she really, I think, made some hard decisions in there. How I'm gonna change my life, how I'm gonna, go about the rest of this, how I'm gonna make this better. She even wrote in some of her journals, how much she missed us, but she knew this was not gonna define her. And she did such.
She went to the California Youth Authority afterwards, and then began to rehabilitate herself and began to work. She wanted a better life for herself.
She was a great student. She went on after high school to do CNA. Her dream was to become a nurse eventually. We were so proud of her because of her, her trials that she went through at a very young age.
When she wasn't working or spending time with her family, Inika pursued her favorite hobby. But on November 12, 2003, Inika lies dead inside her treasured Corolla with at least one gunshot wound to the head. La Habra detectives arrive on the scene.
They were checking this vehicle for clues, and keep in mind that a vehicle is a very small closed area, so it's fairly easy to contain the crime scene. They don't find anything in the car forensically that tells them who the suspect is.
Unable to determine who killed Inika, investigators focus on why.
Police are looking for a motive. Why this young lady is in the middle of an industrialized parking lot.
This was not a robbery gone bad because the victim's cell phone or belongings were there, her jewelry was there. I believe she had rings and watches. Her pockets were not turned out. The car was not in disarray.
They saw that she was completely clothed. Her clothes was intact.
She clearly had not been sexually assaulted. That was clear from the scenario. So it eliminated some of the more common motives for the murder of a female.
It doesn't look like she struggled. It doesn't look like she threw anything. It doesn't look like the crime scene was chaotic.
In fact, it's the opposite.
Her car was backed into a parking stall, a very comfortable way to park the car. She was sitting in the car with her head resting on a pillow, as if she was making herself comfortable.
She seemed to be at rest and at peace. She never saw this coming.
None of it made sense. So why was she there? And why was she killed there?
After finding few clues at the crime scene, investigators released 21-year-old Inika Edmondson's body to the medical examiner for autopsy. Detectives head to the address listed on Inika's driver's license.
In that early morning, we got woke up to that loud, seemed like just loud, door knock. And I laid in her bed and I heard my granny give that treacherous scream. That scream that comes from a mom.
They asked for a list of anyone who her family knew that was close friends with her. They found out there that she was involved with a car club. And they also found out that she had been dating a gentleman by the name of Cimarron Bell.
He was very flashy, very talkative, over the top. He liked dressing nice. He really enjoyed showing off his nice things.
Simi funded his expensive tastes with profits from a cleaning company he owned and operated.
With his janitorial business, he would go into these businesses after hours and clean the business.
But Ainika's mother tells them she wasn't impressed by Simi's flashy clothes and fancy cars.
You know, he would pick her up, he would not get out the car, he would stay across the street. Nobody ever met him. You know, again, he never showed his face.
Back at the station, investigators look at the cell phone collected from Ainika's vehicle.
One of the last phone calls that Ainika Edmondson made was to a person that they understood to be her boyfriend. And that was to Cimarron Bell, known to his friends as Simi.
Investigators want to talk to Simi. But first, they attend Ainika's autopsy the following morning.
Ainika was shot not once, not twice, but 3 times, close range, in the head with a .38 caliber gun.
She was relaxing with her pillow and didn't appear to be holding on to the door or making any attempt to cover her face. It became evident that Miss Edmondson knew the person that had shot her in the head. So the detectives called in several of Miss Edmondson's friends, and they contacted Mr. Bell on the phone and asked him if he would be willing to come into the police station in order for him to be interviewed.
He's escorted back to an interview room to talk to the detectives.
He did mention during the interview that Miss Edmondson is someone who he had dated. He made it sound somewhat casual. The detectives told him that they had looked at Miss Edmondson's phone and that her last call had been to him. He said he spoke to her briefly and that he hadn't seen her since the previous weekend.
He says, "I'm really sorry, she's dead. I plan on going to her funeral. I have no idea who did this to her."
When detectives escort Simi to the lobby, they see he hadn't come alone.
Detectives took note of a woman there waiting for him.
As the first detective finished speaking to Mr. Bell and giving him his business card, the other detective asked the female if she would be willing to step outside in front of the police department so he could speak to her for a couple of minutes. So she agreed. She stepped outside, at which time she told the detective outside that her name was Nissa Wyatt. She claimed to be just a friend who had driven Mr. Bell to the police station.
As for Ainika, Nissa says she barely knew her.
She says, well, I didn't really know her. I only knew her through Simi, and she knows them both through the car club.
Nissa has little to offer. But detectives notice that Simi is suddenly on edge.
The detective who was in the lobby with Mr. Bell noticed that as soon as Miss Wyatt stepped outside, Mr. Bell got extremely nervous. His attention was diverted from the detective. He was focusing outside.
At the time, we thought, okay, he might not necessarily be a suspect, but maybe we need to talk to him later on and continue to evolve this investigation and see what we can find. But for now, we're going to let him go. That's exactly what they did.
Just a few days after Ainika's death, investigators have no leads.
By the time it turned to January of the next year, the case was going nowhere, other than we have a dead young woman in our city.
The very beginning of February, that's when there's a big and very unexpected break in the case that no one was looking for.
3 months after Inika Edmondson's mysterious murder, police actually end up arresting Nisa Wyatt on bank fraud charges. And instead of talking about her crime, she tells police, I want to tell you about one other crime. And this one involves 4 murders.
Three months after Inika Edmondson is shot to death in a La Habra parking lot, 25-year-old Nisa Wyatt is arrested on fraud charges.
Nisa Wyatt got arrested by the feds for what was really some pretty ticky-tacky credit card fraud that she got involved in at her workplace.
Nisa, she was working for a big box store. She was allowing people that she knew to come in with fraudulent credit cards, to buy merchandise this way or return merchandise that way. She would get a kickback from them.
But Nisa wants to talk about something more serious.
The information that she had to offer involved the death of 4 different people. And Ms. Wyatt said that she had specific details about these homicides that she was willing to share, about a person she was dating. And she didn't ask for any special favors. She did not ask for her case to be dismissed. She told the detectives she was very scared of him.
In return, she wants protection for her family. And when she reveals the name, it's a name police have heard before, Cimarron Bell.
Nisa says that she lied when she told police back in November that she and Simi were just friends.
Miss Wyatt said that Mr. Bell was married, but also had a couple of girlfriends, and that both Inika and Miss Wyatt were his girlfriends.
But according to Nisa, Simi and Inika also had a business relationship.
With his janitorial business, he would go into these businesses after hours and clean the business, but he wasn't just cleaning them, he was cleaning them out of checks.
He had Inika open a joint bank account with him and herself in the name of a business, and then deposit the checks through that account, wait for the check to clear, and then take the money out before the bank has an opportunity to find out that it's a stolen check.
But one day, it went wrong. One of the cashier's checks that he had given to one of his business associates was reported stolen. And the first thing that came to mind was that Miss Edmondson must have turned on him so that she would be the only person able to retrieve money from that account. And that made him angry.
Nisa says Simi also believed Inika was spreading rumors about their relationship.
She was telling people that she and Mr. Bell were going to become exclusive, and that he had shopped for a ring. And that upset him because he said that wasn't true.
According to Nisa, Simi told her he was going to get Inika out of his life permanently.
He needed to kill her, in his view, because this information was in the street and it might get back to his wife.
Nisa says she asked Simi to give Inika a second chance.
Miss Wyatt had asked Mr. Bell to give her some time so that she herself could confront Miss Edmondson.
She told him, just let me talk to her first.
But on the night of November 12th, Nisa realized she wouldn't get the chance.
Mr. Bell called Nisa to his home, and she came there, and he was in all black.
He seemed very agitated and annoyed, and he was pacing back and forth, and this was not like him at all. And when Nisa asked him, what's wrong? He said, I did it. I killed her. And she said, killed who? He said, I killed Inika.
And she did not believe him. and he said, I have to show you something.
According to Nisa, they hopped in her car and he directed her to the parking lot of Morgan Metals in La Habra.
And he says, look. And so Nisa looks beyond him to her right and sees what she recognizes being Anika's car there. And it's back into a stall. There's a sticker on Anika's car, which Nisa recognizes as belonging to her. And then she realizes that Mr. Bell's telling the truth.
Simi told Nisa he'd asked Anika to meet him there so they could go to a hotel. She was waiting for him when he arrived.
She is not suspecting trouble, right? She's backed into a parking space. She's got her pillow out to rest. She's got music playing. Her cell phone's in her lap. She's comfy cozy.
He walked up to the car and he told her, I have to get my cell phone in the car. I've left it behind. I need to have that before we go off together. And he kissed her.
He walked to his car. He put some gloves on, came back with a revolver, and shot and killed Miss Edmondson.
He was bragging. He was laughing about how Anika's body jumped when he shot her in the head. And laughing about it.
She realizes, oh boy, what have I got myself involved with? Who is this man? I wouldn't think he was capable of that, but apparently he is.
He killed Anika because he was afraid that Anika was going to be providing too much information about him. He doesn't like it when people provide too much information about him, and now Nisa has too much information about him. So she's pretty realistic in thinking that she has reason to fear him.
For the next 3 months, Nisa stayed in the relationship out of fear, unaware of what lay ahead.
Anika Edmondson's murder was just the first murder. Nisa had no idea that there would be more to come.
2004. Nisa Wyatt tells La Habra detectives that her boyfriend, Simi Bell, confessed to killing his other girlfriend, Anika Edmondson.
At this point, she's in fear for her life because she knows if Simi killed Anika, then she could be next.
Nisa tells investigators that about a month ago, Simi started feeling the loss of the fraud scheme he and Anika had been running together.
He can't meet his expenses, his bills. Car payments on all the cars he has. The money's dried up. He needs more.
And he had come up with a scheme with his good friend, Mr. Brielle Lee. And they had decided that they were going to advertise Mr. Bell's Monte Carlo for sale at an incredibly low price.
He decided to list his Monte Carlo in Auto Finder. And instead of listing it for the $23,000 that it was worth, he only listed it for roughly like $8,500.
Not long after listing the ad, Simi asked Nisa to join a phone call to set up a meeting with potential buyer Mario Larios.
Mr. Bell involved Nisa because he had trouble understanding what Mario was saying.
He thought Mario was saying, I'm coming in a white van. And he had to have Nisa listen, and Nisa told him, no, white Benz. He's coming in a white Benz.
Later on, she sees on the news that a white Mercedes-Benz was found in a commercialized area with 3 bodies in the car. Her mouth dropped, and that's when she knew that Simi was involved.
Investigators are familiar with the case. On January 30th, 24-year-old Mario Larios was found dead, along with his cousin, 26-year-old Fernando Pina, and a friend, 23-year-old Edgar Valle. All 3 men were inside the Mercedes parked behind a La Miranda strip mall.
The white Mercedes-Benz has blood all in the back seat, as well as 2 bodies wrapped up in plastic. In the trunk is a 3rd body, no plastic at all. And when they do the autopsy report, 2 of the men were shot with a .38 caliber gun, and the other man, a .357.
Nisa confronted Semi about what she'd seen on the news.
And that's when he confessed, and he says that he initially invited them to a gas station. He says, follow me back to the house and we'll do our deal there. They follow him back to the house, and that's when he and a friend were waiting.
Mr. Brielle Lee was an accomplice of Mr. Bell and had been enlisted by him.
Brielle waited at the house for the men to arrive.
And the minute they get inside that house, Mr. Bell starts shooting. Mr. Lee is also lying in wait inside that house with the 2nd gun.
Semi fatally shot Edgar. His next shots left Fernando and Mario wounded.
Mr. Bell called out Mr. Lee from his hiding place in the back of the house to assist him in killing Mr. Pena, who was trying to run out of the house, having been shot and wounded, and to finish off Mr. Larios.
Mr. Lee was his willing sidekick. But when the moment came to do the shooting, it looks like Mr. Lee was not entirely sure of himself.
Simi ended up taking a gun, holding it to Brielle Lee's head, and said, if you don't do it, I'm going to shoot you. So this forced Brielle Lee to get involved and shoot.
Brielle fired the fatal shot at Mario, while Simi took out Fernando.
They take their wallets, take their cell phones, take everything of value, bracelets, watches, everything, off their bodies, okay? They go through the wallets and see that there's only a certain amount of cash in Mr. Larios' wallet. It's about $3,000.
Brielle pulled the Mercedes into the garage.
They put one of them in the trunk, and they put 2 of them inside, wrapped in plastic, and then they drove the vehicle to an empty parking lot in the city of La Mirada, and they walked away from the vehicle.
Investigators release Nisa with the understanding that she must take precautions.
She had to get out of the city. Nisa and her family had to change their life, and they ended up leaving Compton and going to another location far away from Compton.
She definitely knows from what the things that he has discussed with her that he has killed before and he can kill again.
Elevate your space with up to 6.
After questioning, La Habra investigators release Nisa Wyatt, former associate of now quadruple murder suspect Simi Bell.
Not only has she tied together the murder of Miss Edmondson, but she has tied together the murder of 3 separate people in Los Angeles County that had also gone unsolved. And at this point, there's no reason for any detectives to believe that the murders in 2 different counties are related in any way, except for the fact that Nisa has important details about these homicides.
Detectives look into her claims about Bell's involvement in the murders of Mario Larios, Fernando Pena, and Edgar Valle.
When they do the autopsy report, 2 of the men were shot with a .38 caliber gun, and the other man, a .357. Police quickly realize this lines up with Nisa's story because she says that Simi told her he shot 2 of the guys. He had a .38 caliber gun. She also says that Brielle Lee shot 1 of the men. He had the .357. So this lines up with her story.
A check of Mario's cell phone records also backs up her story.
They checked the phone belonging to this victim, and they saw that the last number he had dialed was the phone number that belonged to Mr. Bell.
something Mario and Ainika have in common.
It seems too coincidental that you have separate murder victims who have cell phone numbers that show that the last person they called prior to their death was Mr. Bell.
On Friday, February 12, 2004, detectives obtain a search warrant for his home.
The search warrant allowed the detectives to bring a forensic crime lab in. They began looking for evidence anywhere in the house. It was a small, modest home, but the inside looked very nice. The walls were freshly painted. It appeared almost like a new home, maybe as if the walls had been plastered.
They begin to dig into the patchwork of the house and find bullets lodged in the house.
And then they're finding visible bullet holes in the walls in the kitchen. There is still a bullet sitting behind the dish drainer. The dishes in the dish drainer still sitting on the kitchen counter, just sitting there.
I searched the garage, and the .38 caliber handgun that was believed to have been used to murder Miss Edmondson was found. I searched one of the bedrooms, and I found contracts that showed a business relationship with Morgan Metals in La Habra.
Morgan Metals, the very location where Ainika was killed, which is why he chose it. He knew it was a place no one would see the murder occur.
And this is the same area that he told police he'd never visited.
Following the search, Simi is arrested.
They see his 2001 Monte Carlo and they pull him over, and that's when they search the car. They find the .357 gun.
Investigators believe they now have both murder weapons.
The Rome was found in the garage. The other one with the .357 was in the Monte Carlo.
Police took Mr. Bell to the police station. They began to tell him, you've been accused of 4 murders, one involving Ainika Edmondson, the other involving 3 men, and the 3 men were killed in your house. And Mr. Bell stares ahead and puts his head in his hands and begins to cry. And says nothing after that. Nothing to say.
The following day, police pick up Simi's alleged accomplice in the triple homicide, Brielle Lee.
Mr. Lee is arrested and he is taken out of the police station. And he is, I wouldn't call it forthcoming, but he's more verbal than Mr. Bell. And he begins to tell the police officers a series of lies.
Brielle just kept talking, and he kept changing his story. He changed his story a lot.
Both Simi and Brielle plead not guilty. As for Simi, prosecutors plan to seek the ultimate punishment.
A case of that magnitude, you're seeking the death penalty. We're talking about 4 murders.
It was very clear that if Mr. Bell didn't like somebody that was infringing on his lifestyle or threatened to expose him, Mr. Bell's plan was to get payback.
On Thursday, March 17, 2011, in California's Norwalk Superior Court, 36-year-old Simi Bell goes on trial for the murder of Ainika Edmondson, Mario Larios, Fernando Pina, and Edgar Valle.
I was about 21 now. I was pregnant with my first child during this trial. My granny, she was never the same. We all showed up though, we were there every day. My dad, her brother, her sister-in-law, me, her dad, I believe, came. It was hard, hearing the details.
In his opening statement, prosecutors lay out Simi's motive in Ainika's death.
You have his girlfriend who he was working with, and she was cool until he felt like she was in the way. He felt like she was taking money out of his pocket, and he felt like she needed to pay with her life.
According to the prosecutors, Simi's motive in the triple homicide was both greed and revenge.
He wanted to target buyers from a specific ethnicity because he felt that people from that culture had ripped off a lot of other people, so he thought that this was a good payback.
Cimarron Bell is a stone-cold psychopath. He had no intention of ever selling them. He was just going to kill them and take the money.
Prosecutors present overwhelming evidence.
The forensic examination of the firearms tied them both to Inika Edmondson's murder as to the Rome, and then the Rome was also used to kill the individuals in the triple murder, and the .357 was used to kill Mario Larios. There is DNA in this house, huge quantities of DNA that is absolutely 100% matched to the victims at mathematical exclusion rates that are astronomical.
Their star witness, Nisa White, takes the stand.
This was essentially a story of payback, but he didn't see another payback coming, and that was from his other girl, Nisa.
She was the backstory and motive, which was very interesting and very helpful for our understanding of why the crimes happened.
Simi's attorneys take aim at Nisa's testimony.
The defense attacks her credibility. They actually accuse prosecutors of making a deal with the devil.
They basically told the jury, you can't believe a word out of Nisa's mouth.
But the jury sees things differently.
It's Nisa's testimony that ultimately forces Simi to pay the price for Anika's death, and he's found guilty of not one, not two, but all 4 murders.
Mr. Bell was sentenced to death. That was the jury's recommendation, and the judge did impose a sentence of death.
I mean, nothing ever makes it feel better, but it was definitely a relief for us, a relief for, us as a family, knowing that he was finally put away. On that day particularly, I can say we all gained a small amount of peace.
At a separate trial, Simi's accomplice, Brielle Lee, is found guilty of the second-degree murder of Mario Larios. He's sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. The case comes to an end, but for Inika's family, the loss lingers.
Life was just too short for her, and if I could tell her one thing, it would simply be thank you. Thank you for being who I needed at that time. My mother died when I was 3, and she filled that void for me.
He was just a great, fun dad, a cool dad. He's gonna always tell you, I'm cool, I got the swag.
I could not have asked for a better father for my daughter. And for his life to end the way it did, it was just horrific.
Firefighters discovered an unidentified body.
Investigators immediately smelled the unmistakable scent of gasoline. Timothy greeted someone at the front door.
This person who appears to be a meter reader.
We tried to ask the public, hey, does anybody know who this person is?
I'm like, what enemies could he have? Who could do this?
All that effort to more or less put a costume on, then execute them. It's kind of the ultimate payback.
On September 14th, 2015, at 12:43 a.m., the Chicago Fire Department responds to a 911 call about a house fire in Morgan Park.
The neighbors heard a loud explosion. It woke the whole neighborhood up. And because it alarmed everybody, they proceeded to call 911.
Firefighters find a single-story home fully engulfed in flames.
Firefighters rushed inside of the house to battle this blaze.
By 1:22 a.m., the fire is extinguished.
Firefighters aren't going from room to room. They discovered an unidentified body in the back addition.
They discover this body. It's burnt, really beyond, recognition.
The homeowner is listed as 48-year-old Timothy Lawrence.
The assumption is that it was probably Timothy. One of the firefighters knew him and called his ex-wife.
It was early in the morning, I would say probably 3:30 maybe. My phone rang and it was his cousin. He was a firefighter. And he was like, hey, we just got a call. There's a fire at Tim's house. He's like, have you heard from him? I called my parents and I'm like, hey, I just got a call saying that Timothy's house is on fire. Nobody can reach him. And my mom didn't want me to drive, so they came and got me. And we went to the house. In my mind, I'm still hoping, I'm still praying.
Timothy Lawrence was born in Chicago on March 21st, 1967. The second son in a family of 5.
Timothy's parents got a divorce and he ended up moving around a lot. In fact, he stayed in about 17 addresses.
His father lived in Aurora, and Timothy spent quite a bit of time with his father. Timothy decided to enroll in high school in South Shore, where his grandmother resided.
During his senior year at South Shore High School, Timothy met Patricia.
I remember it clearly. It was on the 63rd Street bus. He got on with a friend of his. I was sitting in the back of the bus, and he came up there, and him and his friends just started messing with me. I had a heavy accent at that time, so when I said something, he was like, oh my God, where are you from? And so we just got to talking, and he asked for my number. I gave it to him, and by the time I got home, my grandmother was like, hey, some boy named Timothy called for you. I'm like, wow, that was quick. He was just a totally opposite person from me. He was more outgoing. He had so many friends where I was more of an introvert. So I think that's why we got along so well. I think I fell in love pretty quickly with him, and we just started hanging every opportunity we got, and he was so ambitious.
Timothy dreamt of becoming a professional performer.
In high school, he was in this group called the Men from Mars, and it was a dance. They dance and they rap. I just knew he was gonna make it as a musician, because that's how into it he was.
In 1995, after 10 years together, Timothy and Patricia got married. Soon after, they welcomed a daughter, Destiny.
He was just a great, fun dad, a cool dad. If you ask him, he's gonna always tell you, I'm cool, I got the swag. Stuff like that.
Timothy set his dreams of fame aside and focused on fatherhood.
Once I had Destiny, he was like, I gotta take care of my family. I gotta do something else. So he went ahead and got his CDL, and he was on the road for a while. He did not like it. He did not like being on the road, especially. He'll be gone weeks at a time.
When he was on the road and couldn't answer, I would leave him voicemails of me, of like songs that I came up with. It was really cute.
In the early 2000s, Timothy and Patricia hit a rough patch.
I think we just kind of grew apart. And I know people say that, but it is something that happened. I think we just, because we met so young, I think both of us didn't think that we didn't experience life,
Not quite ready for divorce, the couple settled on separation.
It was very kind of strange for me, to the point where he had to kind of drill it in my head, like, no, we're separating, this is for real.
There was a few years after we separated that things was pretty rough with us, but we always knew that our number one priority was Destiny. That was it. I mean, we would argue, but when it came to her, there was no argument.
Whatever the case may be, he was there. He was my biggest hype man.
Timothy made another big change.
Eventually, he started working as a garbage truck driver, and he also drove the snowplow. He did that for a long time.
In August 2007, Timothy purchased a home in the Morgan Park neighborhood.
He was able to, get his own house. He worked hard for a lot of his life. So I think when he finally moved into his house, it was like a reward to him.
For almost a decade, Timothy and Patricia remained separated.
They were just like very good co-parents and best friends.
We got back together several times. The only reason that the divorce finally went through is because he started dating a young lady, and he was like, I don't think it's right in God's eye that I'm still married, but I'm out here, dating.
I would say he was kind of a ladies' man a little bit. There were a couple girlfriends that I was introduced to. They were cool.
In the fall of 2014, Destiny moved to Alabama for college. Even with hundreds of miles between them, Timothy was always there for his daughter.
The only thing that he kind of drilled into my head was to stay in school, get as much education as you can. He's always been a great dad.
In the pre-dawn hours of September 14th, 2015, Timothy's house has been gutted by a fire. A body, presumed to be Timothy, has been found inside. Patricia arrives on the scene.
When I walked up and introduced myself to the detective, I explained who I was, and he was like, have you heard from Timothy? I said, no. He was like, at this time, we're thinking that the body that was found was his. I just broke down, and in my mind, I'm thinking, this can't.
The police asked Patricia, Timothy's ex-wife, to come to the police station to give an interview.
With Patricia on her way, detectives with the Chicago Police Department take an initial walkthrough of the scene with investigators from the fire department.
Fire investigators immediately smell the unmistakable scent of gasoline.
For all purposes, this was an obvious arson.
The smell of gas is very distinctive, and there was no reason for there to be gas inside the residence unless it was used as an accelerant to start this fire. The body was so badly burned that they couldn't tell who he was or how he died, but everything pointed to foul play.
Detectives released the body to the medical examiner for autopsy.
Investigators had a lot of questions still to answer, but one thing that was clear: this was now a crime.
Following a fire at the home of 48-year-old Timothy Lawrence, Chicago investigators suspect foul play.
There was a body. It smelled like gasoline all throughout the house, and there was this massive fire.
We know it's a crime, so evidence technicians come.
The body was found in an addition in the back of the house, so they're going to start there.
So that's really where the fire started. I mean, that was like burnt to the ground. That was all made of wood.
That was a point of origin. There was several distinct areas where an accelerant was visibly seen and you could smell it.
Because the fire was started where the body was found, that told law enforcement that whoever started that fire was trying to burn the body as well.
A lot of people use arson to try to cover up the physical evidence because it does do a good job of burning up all those things. When things are burnt, there's no DNA, there's no fingerprints, it's gone.
Investigators locate a potential source of evidence that wasn't destroyed.
There were some external cameras on Timothy's residence. One on the garage facing the driveway, and another one on the porch facing the main entrance.
The cameras are connected to a computer inside the house.
The DVR was burnt up, and the hard drive and all the contents were melted. However, there was a sign that said protected by this particular security company, and had a phone number. The provider's placard says, hey, call this number for assistance. That's the only possible hope.
They reached out to the security company to see if they could obtain footage.
They had to get a warrant, which could take a long time, but it could really pay off.
Investigators look for more immediate answers.
When anything like this happens, you do what's called a canvass. You knock on the doors. Hey, do you know who lived over there? How is that person? Do you know anybody that you'd think that, would want to do this?
Many neighbors knew Timothy Lawrence and described him as a quiet man who was a good neighbor, kept to himself, and largely hung out with his own family.
One of the neighbors points out that Timothy owns 3 cars, but only 2 were in his driveway. There's a dark color Buick LeSabre that's missing, and so the police issue a bolo to look out for the car.
Detectives head back to the station.
It's normal for the police to do a background investigation even on a victim. And they did conduct one, and they didn't find anything. He had a pretty clean history.
Investigators speak with Timothy's ex-wife, Patricia.
At first they thought, oh, was he into something illegal? Was he doing why he put cameras up and all that? I'm like, if y'all knew him, he was the furthest thing from doing anything illegal.
Timothy had a nephew who had some brushes with the law, so law enforcement asked Patricia if there was any kind of connection there.
They was like, do you think he's capable of doing something? Like maybe he came and asked for help and Timothy wouldn't help him. I hadn't seen the kid in years, so I did not know if he was capable. I didn't think so, but you start looking at everybody differently. You start looking at everyone sideways. Even people that you've known for years, even family members, you start thinking, okay, are they capable of this? Who would do this to him? Who would have such an animosity towards him to do that?
Patricia couldn't think of anyone who might be after Timothy or want to hurt him. He was a hard-working family man.
The next day, investigators attend the autopsy.
The police still don't know 100% whether the body is Timothy or how he died.
Because the body was burned so badly, it came down to the dental records, which confirmed that the body was in fact Timothy Lawrence's body.
The autopsy also reveals Timothy's cause of death.
When they examine the body, they can see that there's an obvious, bullet wound in the back of the skull.
It was determined that he was killed by a medium caliber bullet to the left side of his head. This is a homicide, and it was an intentional arson and killing.
Detectives share the news with Timothy's family.
It was very jarring, very confusing, because like I said, the type of person my dad is, it took a lot for him to even get mad. So I'm like, what? It just was confusing to me, because I'm like, what enemies could he have? Who could do this?
It was hard, especially with Destiny. I mean, it was to the point where we couldn't be out of each other's sight. And all I was trying to do is be as strong as possible for her without her seeing me breaking down. I would go in the bathroom and I would cry just so that she don't see me crying.
2 days after the fire, investigators get a potential break when Timothy's missing Buick is found abandoned 2 blocks from his home.
Whoever took the car could know something or could be responsible, so it was really important for law enforcement to process the car carefully.
And then evidence technician comes and processes that car. So the exterior for fingerprints, the interior for fingerprints and biological material.
They didn't find any fingerprints in the car. That's usually a quicker result, but they also processed the car for DNA. That, however, takes longer to find out.
A few days later, investigators receive a response from Timothy's security company.
So the detectives hear from the security company and find out that they are able to pull that security footage. That is fantastic news.
Detectives start from the beginning, watching video from weeks before the fire.
You start watching all the different video clips, and remember it's motion sensor, so the car goes by, the mailman comes and delivers mail, the kid kicks a soccer ball. You got to watch that. We tease and say it's the game of duck, duck, goose, right? You're like duck, duck, and then go, wait a minute. That was really the turning point in this case.
Hours of security camera footage obtained from the home of shooting victim Timothy Lawrence. A clip from 2 days before the fire catches their attention.
On September 12th, it appeared that Timothy greeted someone at the front door. This person was dressed in a hard hat and a day glow vest.
He had what it looks like an iPad or some sort of tablet in his hand, and he's also carrying a satchel.
The police can't really see this individual's face, but what they can see is that he has on a very distinct T-shirt.
Then, investigators see what happened to Timothy's Buick.
And he gets in the victim's car, Timothy Lawrence's car, and leaves.
For 2 days, there's no sign of this man, but more importantly, no sign of Timothy.
Then on the 14th, Timothy's vehicle returns. The quality's good enough where you can make out the license plate of the car, and you know the shape of the car.
It's the same guy driving, but he's not alone. There's someone else with him now.
The recording picked up 2 men headed towards the front door with a gas cannon.
One guy has a skull cap on, like a knit hat, and some other clothing. But if you watch the video, he never looks at the camera. And he doesn't give a side profile to the camera. He takes out the 2 large gas containers. The other person gives a pretty decent side profile, is much taller.
The suspects use a key to get inside of the home. So now the police have not 1, but 2 suspects that they're looking for in connection with this crime.
And then it goes dead. Someone disabled the power.
It ended just before the fire was reported.
Someone was thinking that, hey, I'm going to unplug, it's not going to work anymore, right before he set the fire. And he's like, I don't care because it's all going to get burned up. He didn't know it was in the cloud.
Timothy was not seen again after he let the person dressed as the meter man inside his home.
It looks like the first man in the utility uniform came, killed Timothy, left, and came back later with an accomplice to burn the place down.
After you look at this information, what do you then do? Okay, I know this person went and got, an accelerant, some gasoline.
Investigators look at Timothy's credit card activity.
The police discovered on September the 13th that somebody using Timothy Lawrence's credit card purchased gasoline in the amount of $28.76 from a local gas station.
That is the day before Timothy's home burned down, but it's the day after the mysterious meter reader visited Timothy's home. The person who did it stole Timothy's credit card, used it to buy gasoline, to then burn down the house to cover up the crime. Police visited the gas station and interviewed the service manager who was on duty at the time. Unfortunately, however, he's unable to identify the potential suspects, and there's no surveillance video.
On January 3rd, 2016, police widened their search by releasing stills from the videos to the public.
There was a time out there that we kind of hit a dead end, and we tried to ask the public, hey, does anybody know who this person is?
No one comes forward, and his family doesn't recognize them. They have what they think are actual pictures of the persons responsible, but they have no idea who they are.
Months pass, and the men remain unidentified.
At that time, it seemed like, oh my God, you know, it's been years almost. You know, it just seems so long. In reality, it was just a few months. But while you're going through that process, it just seems like a long time.
I was worried about that because, you know, a lot of crime and murder that happens in Chicago, it can go unsolved. It can never be solved.
9 months after the fire, on July 21st, investigators finally received the results of the forensic testing from Timothy's recovered Buick.
DNA is discovered on the pair of eyeglasses that are found inside of the vehicle.
DNA leads police to a 42-year-old Chicago resident who has a long criminal history. His name is Willie Bell.
In July 2016, 9 months after the murder of Timothy Lawrence, Chicago police have a suspect and a name.
Willie Bell had a long list of prior convictions, including a conviction for armed robbery, aggravated discharge of a firearm, and for trespassing.
To learn more about him, investigators look online.
Social media postings are not private. They are there for the world to see. Oftentimes, defendants, or criminals, or people accused of crimes leave breadcrumbs on social media.
Right away, detectives locate an incriminating photo.
Investigators made the shocking discovery in Willie Bell's social media of photographs of him wearing the same shirt, "I'm that dude," that was seen leaving the home after the murder of Timothy Lawrence.
We saw the shirt, "I'm that dude," which is still one of my all-time favorite ironies in cases.
Investigators obtain warrants for Willie Bell's private Facebook messages.
Detectives go through hundreds of messages. They learn that his 3-year relationship with his girlfriend had ended, and Willie refused to accept that it was over.
Detectives make a potentially important connection.
On July 30th, Timothy Lawrence had become Facebook friends with Willie Bell's ex-girlfriend. Around the same time, Timothy and the ex-girlfriend became connected. Willie got into a really bad argument with his ex-girlfriend.
Detectives theorize that Willie was jealous over her new friendship with Timothy. He amped up his efforts to get in touch with her.
Willie Bell even got creative and found other ways to contact her through social media. She had blocked him because of these attempts, but he used other social media accounts in order to get in touch with the ex.
She finally communicated with him and seemed to have indicated that she was interested in someone new.
So the only connection that the police can find is this woman between Willie Bell and Timothy Lawrence. And it looks like Willie Bell thinks that Timothy Lawrence is the person that has replaced him.
You know, you can feel the rage starting when he's learning about, this other relationship. You could see it building.
Willie Bell went through multiple sort of diatribes on social media, expressing his frustration with the loss of the relationship and expressing frustration with the new person that was in his ex-girlfriend's life. Murders have occurred based on jealousies or disruptions in relationships since the beginning of time.
Timothy's family members know of the woman, but say the relationship wasn't serious. In fact, it was barely a relationship at all.
From what I understand, Timothy was on his normal garbage route, and he saw her trying to get a car seat in her car. So he stopped the truck and helped her, and that really sparked that relationship where, you know, hey, this person's a nice guy, and they started talking.
Investigators interviewed the woman.
You know by talking with her just in a couple minutes that this is not someone that's going to conspire with somebody to murder.
So the investigators think that Willie Bell actually believed that the relationship with his ex and Timothy was a lot more than what it really was. And it was driving him so crazy that he went after this man who wasn't even the rival that he thought he was.
By the fall of 2016, investigators believe Willie Bell is responsible for the death of his perceived enemy, Timothy Lawrence.
Investigators believe that on his visit to Timothy's home, Willie Bell shot his romantic rival in the head, stole his credit cards, and stole his vehicle. In order to prove him guilty, they've got to put their case together piece by piece, brick by brick.
Think of a spoke of a wheel. It's all of these spokes all pointing to the center. It has to be that person.
Well, the investigators put surveillance on Willie, and they determined what he drives, which is a Cadillac, and they also know where he lives.
While we were building the case, we kind of kept an eye on him there and also at his residence. That was on the way for two of us three to work every day, and we would just make sure that Cadillac is still there and he's still not in the wind.
Investigators learned that Willie Bell is employed as a truck driver.
There is no record of Willie Bell working as a meter reader in Chicago or anywhere else. Authorities believe that he had purchased the day-glow vest and the helmet as a ruse to get into the home of Timothy Lawrence. Timothy Lawrence, being oblivious to what was going on, readily invited this meter reader into his home.
That leads them to canvass a local hardware store to see if they can find where Willie purchased this costume that allowed him to gain access into Timothy's home.
Footage from a local hardware store shows Willie entering the hardware store and purchasing the hard hat and the day-glow vest 1 week before the murder of Timothy Lawrence.
And at the time, the self-checkouts where he went to have a little micro SD card, and it only records 10 days. So we couldn't get that great facial shot because it was beyond, by the time we figured this all out, it was a little bit later, but they still had the footage, the overview footage of him coming in, him purchasing it.
They also obtained footage of him leaving the store in his Cadillac.
Next, detectives subpoena Willie Bell's phone records.
Cell records can show you which cell tower a phone pings from. You can start to pinpoint about where that phone was.
The phone records placed Willie Bell in the area of the home on both the day of the fire and on the day of the homicide.
He was in the area in both the 12th and the 14th.
The records also expose an unexpected clue.
Phone records revealed that Willie Bell was in constant contact with Philip Bell, his older brother, at the time of the fire at Timothy Lawrence's home. So police had their man. But there was that second person that they saw in the video carrying the gas can.
Could it be Philip Bell?
A close analysis of the surveillance video, as well as a still shot of Philip Bell, led authorities to the conclusion that Philip was the accomplice of his brother Willie on the day of the fire.
On October 24th, 2016, Over a year after the fire, authorities are ready to confront Willie Bell in person.
We call it the death of 1,000 cuts. So it's all of those pieces of evidence. It's not just one. It's the stack upon stack upon stack. It's the DNA. It's the cell phone evidence bringing him in those scenes. So looking at all those facts, there's no one did it but Willie.
More than a year after this murder had been committed, Willie Bell was stopped by police as he drove home from his job.
Myself and Detectives Cummings actually grabbed him, was right in front, not too far from his home, right in front of the 22nd District Police Station when we picked him up.
Willie doesn't have a lot to say. He denies everything. He isn't going to confess. He says he does not know Timothy and he's never been to Timothy's home.
4 days later, police arrest Willie's brother and suspected accomplice, Philip Bell.
If you have two people that have committed a crime together, you're going to obviously use that against each other to have one talk about the other one. Now's the time to...
Chicago investigators interview Philip Bell regarding the shooting of Timothy Lawrence. They suspect that Philip helped his brother, Willie, attempt to cover up the crime by setting a fire inside Timothy's home.
It's always interesting when something happens and it's family involved. It just comes down to either loyalty or self-preservation.
So this is a very difficult situation for the brother to be in because he has his loyalty to his brother, but also he has to save himself. And Philip ultimately chose to talk and tell the truth.
So Philip said that Willie called him and told him that he had hit a lick, meaning that he had tried to rob someone and that person had fought back. During the struggle, Willie said that he had shot and killed the other person.
Philip advised him, you can't leave it like that. You have to burn it down.
And Philip agreed to help.
Philip looked beyond the fact that he may have been involving himself in a crime and was loyal to his family, a decision that he will forever regret.
Philip tells investigators that on September 13th, he went with his brother to Timothy Lawrence's home.
Philip told authorities that he and Willie went inside of the home, doused it with gasoline. Philip admits to stealing a laptop computer and a camera before leaving the home and setting it ablaze. The brothers then quickly fled the home as it became engulfed in flames.
Philip says he didn't know about it until later when he heard about the crime on the news, that his brother had killed Timothy Lawrence out of jealousy. Since the night of the fire, he says that he and Willie have never discussed what happened.
Investigators charge Willie with premeditated murder.
Willie Bell was charged with first-degree murder, concealment of a homicidal death, home invasion, residential arson, and possession of a stolen motor vehicle.
When you see that he goes through all that effort to more or less put a costume on, to get someone inside their house, then execute them, then come back days later and torch the place to make sure they're not caught, it's kind of the ultimate payback.
Even so, justice is anything but swift.
Willie and his attorney kept making excuses as to push it back, keep pushing it back.
Philip is ultimately charged with concealment of a homicidal death and residential burglary.
Philip pays the price for his involvement. In 2021, he is sentenced to 2 years, one in prison and another under supervised release.
His brother kind of went to jail and got out before Willie even got sentenced.
In April 2023, Willie Bell runs out of excuses.
It took 7 years. It was the longest 7 years of my life. I must commend the state's attorney at the time. Him and the victims and witness advocate, they kept me up to date with everything. I was at work and he called me and he's like, I have some news.
Willie decided ultimately to cut his losses and to plead guilty. He pled guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder and received a sentence of 28 years in the Department of Corrections.
If it was left up to me, personally, he would rot in jail for the rest of his life. And he could still, because, you know, ain't no telling what happens while they're in prison. So it could be a life sentence to him, but to me, it wasn't long enough. It was not long enough.
Whether or not justice was served is really up to the family of the deceased. He suffered a tragic, horrible death that he did not deserve.
My fondest memory of him was, you know, just him always being there for everything when it came to Destiny. Everything, every show, every performance, anything that has to do with his pie, he was there. And I could not have asked for a better father for my daughter. He was just a great, great person. And for his life to end the way it did, it was just horrific.
After something like that happens, you can never really move on from it. But we can, you know.
I've had many people to leave my life in debt. And I love them, but if you ever lose love on this side of heaven, you've lost a great thing. When I lost Idric, I lost a piece of me.
A loud shot went off. I just kept screaming like, this is not real. Like, who would do this?
This wasn't some drug deal gone south. So I don't have a drive-by shooting. What I have, right, is an assassination.
He wanted to hurt her. He wanted to break her heart the way his was.
Revenge gratification feels like, you know, I'm gonna make sure you understand how I feel, and you'll never forget this.
January 8th, 2018. It's 6 a.m. on a Monday in New Orleans. The start of another work week for 29-year-old Idric Brister and his fiancée, Jontrese Mims.
He got up, he got the children ready for school. That's the kind of guy he was. Very helpful, very genuine, just overall a good person. He came in the room and told me, the children ready, I'm about to go, okay? I said, don't walk out this house without giving me a kiss. And he was like, oh, blushing, so he gave me a kiss. And I was like, all right, go ahead. And I got up so I could get myself dressed, and he walked out the door.
As Jontrese gets ready to take the kids to school, Idric leaves for work. He is only gone for a few moments when she hears the sound of gunshots.
I'm like, these dudes in New Orleans crazy. Like, it's too early to be out here shooting. And before I could get my shirt on, 2 other shots rung off. Like, those 2 was very close. So now I'm tripping. I don't have no shoes on my feet. I'm running outside. And Idric is laying on the ground at the end of my steps. Oh my God. I called the police first. I told them what happened. And I called his mama. I could barely speak. I just kept screaming like, this is not real. Like who would do this?
Idric Eugene Brister was born on March 19, 1988, in New Orleans, Louisiana. The youngest of 5 children, raised by Arthur Gillum and Vicki Brister.
As a kid, Idric we used to have a name for him, and his name was Tasmania, because he was a busybody. Like, he was always into things.
He was very attentive, he was very smart. I taught him how to work on cars. I taught him how to fix things. I even taught him how to cook. He was just my right-hand man, and we did everything together.
Church was also an important part of Idrik's life. Starting in the 6th grade, he was part of a youth program designed to keep kids off the streets.
They went out, they ministered to people. You know, if someone was going through something, they always assisting and talking to them and just showed love and helped them along the way.
But that didn't mean Idrik was immune to making mistakes. As a teenager, he was arrested a couple of times for minor drug possession.
He has got into some trouble, and it's basically the same path, helping somebody. The first time he was riding with a friend, and the friend had marijuana. He wasn't smoking it, but the friend had marijuana when the cops stopped him, and it was in the car.
In his early 20s, he took the fall again, this time for a girlfriend.
That young lady had marijuana in the house, and it was hers, but he wouldn't dare let her go to jail, you know. So he took the charge, and he went to jail, even though he knew he had probation for marijuana.
It resulted in a 3-year prison sentence. But even behind bars, Idrik tried to help others.
He just loves people. While he was serving his time, he was holding Bible studies, he was helping guys back there and, you know, ministering to them.
When he got out in 2014, Idrik was even more focused on his faith. He even became a carpenter.
He worked for a construction company, Woodward. I mean, it was a blessing because, I gave him some of these talents. And in other words, I was duplicating myself in him, but to be better than I was.
I was so proud of Idrik, trying to get back on the right track. And he assured me that, listen, I'm not going down that route ever again.
Then, in 2017, Idrik met the woman who would make his life complete, Jontrese Mims.
July 7th, I talked to my cousin Brittany. She was like, you should swing through, we're going to a party tonight. I got there, and Idrik was frying fish. When I walked in the door, y'all, Idrik was staring at me with this huge smile on his face. Never met this boy in my life. Like, who is this?
From the beginning, it seemed like a fairy tale.
Me and Idrik talked the whole night. And we slept on a sofa together. Literally, like, talked until we fell asleep on the sofa. The next morning, me and Idrik woke up before everybody. Idrik set the table up like we was at a restaurant. So we eating breakfast, and he's still staring at me. And he was like, am I ever gonna see you again?
Jontrese had had some not great relationships in the past, and this one felt so much healthier.
Soon as me and Idrik started dating, we was glued. He was me and I was him. Like, we were one person for real. We went on 4 dates a week. We'll go uptown, we'll go out, we'll walk on Frenchmen, we'll go to museums, art galleries. No stopping. Like, he never had a moment where he was like, I need a break. He was just amazing.
While Jontrese worked long hours as a nurse, Idrik was there to help her with her children.
When I get home from work, Idrik is on the floor with the children doing homework for hours. He has put them in a tub already. He done took Sky hair down. They done ate dinner. My dinner waiting for me. My children never experienced what Idrik was showing us.
After only a few months, they both knew they wanted to spend the rest of their lives together.
Yeah, Idrik found a house in the 17th that we wanted to move into. Idrik took care of all the maintenance that had to be done. It wasn't inspected until January 8th. January 7th, on a Sunday, me and Idrik went uptown and we driving around, we having the time of our life. We decided to go across the river by his family house because they was making music. Idric used to rap. And he was a poet, a very good one. We was making crazy songs, just everybody was having fun.
The celebration stretched into the early hours of the morning. Idric and John Treese finally headed home around 4 a.m. on January 8th.
He was driving fast because we both had to go to work. But he slowed down on the West Bank when we was passing up West Jeff Hospital. It said, "I'ma marry you." And I was blown away. He told me his mama had a ring. It was like, my mama got the ring and everything, I'm serious. "Would you marry me?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll marry you." We're singing songs all the way home at this point and both excited. We got home and it's like 5 o'clock. I don't think Idric slept at all because when I woke up, he was on the bed like this staring at me, asleep. So I was like, "Oh, why is you watching me sleep? Like, what's up?" He was like, "You're just so beautiful."
But just hours after they became engaged, the happiest night of their lives has suddenly turned into a nightmare. Now Idric lies unconscious and bleeding in front of their home, the victim of a shooting. He's alive, but barely.
The police get there and the ambulance there and all that, and they putting him on a stretcher. At this point, I didn't see where Idric was shot at. I just saw a bunch of blood.
When I arrived, I met with the units on scene and asked them what they have. They informed me that they had the victim, they had a single gunshot wound to the head. They also pointed out a bunch of .45 caliber casings. They were all located right around the victim.
To police, it looks like Idric was shot at close range. The fact that only one of the bullets hit him indicates the gunman wasn't experienced.
There were strike marks in a wall where, of course, he most likely missed. We weren't able to tell exactly which shot hit him, but I'll tell you this, where he got shot at, unfortunately, that would have dropped him right there where he stood.
This was a deliberate targeting of this young man. Who in the world could possibly want to hurt Idric Brister?
Idric Brister has been rushed to the hospital in critical condition following a shooting outside his New Orleans home. Investigators are now looking for clues to explain what happened.
We searched the area, maybe see if we could find some footprints or car, tire marks, anything like that to kind of lead us as to how this person got away from there, you know, a getaway car or something like that. We weren't able to find anything. All we had was casings, a victim, pretty much that's it.
Idric's new fiancé, John Treese Mims, says it doesn't make any sense to her either.
He don't have beef with nobody. Like, this is the sweetest guy I know. I couldn't understand why somebody would want to do this to him.
I asked her, I said, "Well, what about yourself? Do you have anybody that maybe you having problems with or anything like that?" She said no. She said she's a church-going person. She really doesn't have any problems like that.
I was so tore up. I'm like, this gotta be mistaken identity. Like, my boyfriend don't mess with nobody.
Police know the area has experienced drug-related violence before, but according to John Treese, Idric isn't involved in anything like that.
This isn't some drug deal gone wrong. There were no drugs on scene. Idric was an angel.
So at the time, we were thinking maybe it was a robbery. Maybe somebody was trying to carjack him.
But his car is still there. His wallet is still there. This isn't a robbery gone bad. This isn't a drive-by shooting either, because this isn't like there was a spray of bullets and a car screaming by. Somebody has to want to kill this man. It's an assassination.
The only person who might be able to give them answers is undergoing emergency surgery.
I'm newly engaged and my fiance is hurt and I can't talk to him.
When we got there, they said it didn't look good, but they said they're gonna do all what they can. And I expressed that, hey, do whatever you have to do in order to save him.
I paced a lot. I did a lot of pacing, back and forth, just praying. And, the doctors come out and they telling us that they went through like 33 pints of blood.
Several hours later, Idric is finally stabilized, but it's still unclear if he'll recover.
They let us see him later that night, and he wasn't himself no more. He didn't look like Idric. They did so much work on his head. Of course, he couldn't talk. He wasn't moving. His family, his brothers, and friends is like going crazy. Like, they're going crazy.
I conditioned myself at that time to say, okay, now you need to learn the truth of what's going on. You need to know why.
With emotions running high, John Treese becomes the target of suspicion.
And I was just looking like the suspect to the family. Like, you gotta know something. He was with you.
My phone was blowing up, and I started getting all kind of phone calls from his friends. And one friend in particular calls me. He says, Alicia, it's John Treese. It's that girl. It's that girl. I'm telling you, it's that girl. Look into her. See, something is going on. I went to her and I said, I think it's time we need to talk. So we took a long walk down the hall and we talked for maybe like a good hour.
John Treese assures Idric's sister she had nothing to do with the shooting, but she is starting to suspect she might know who did. Her ex-boyfriend, Christopher Alexander.
Chris was my third boyfriend in my life. My kid's dad was my second. And I moved out of my mom's house and I let Chris come live with me. He had a daughter as well. I got a message from Chris saying, I heard what happened around now. I'm so sorry you're going through something like that. If you need me, I'm always gonna be here for you, etc., etc. Like, how you heard what happened around this, it ain't make it to the news yet. Even though Chris had friends in my neighborhood, it's early in the morning. Nobody's really outside.
So I said to her, did he do this? And she said, there's nobody else that would want to hurt Idric. Christopher was someone that helped bring up her kids. He had been in and out her life, but he did not want to let her go.
John Treese says when the relationship ended, Christopher didn't take it well. And when John Treese moved on, he became jealous of Idric.
So now that I'm understanding like the whole elements of their relationship and this whole triangle that's going on, I say you need to get up and you need to go to the nearest police station.
She said, go talk to the police, say something, fight for my brother. Don't let his life just be in vain. Like, he would have did it for you, do it for him. And she was right.
I sit on the 4th floor praying, God, hear my prayer. This is me begging God, like, please, let him stay.
Lash sensation. I work in the nursing field, and we really was growing up together.
John Treese and Chris were together for nearly 4 years, but eventually it began to feel like John Treese was carrying most of the load.
I paid the rent, the lights, the water, the phone bills, the food, took care of the children, everything. I was doing everything by myself. And I got tired. I decided to move to South Carolina, and I homeschooled my children in the mountains.
The separation only lasted 3 months. When John Treese returned home for Christmas in 2014, she wound up getting back together with Chris.
It's not a surprise because she had been involved with him for so long. It's very difficult to just cut that off mentally, as well as spiritually sometimes. And they were very young.
But the relationship quickly soured again when Chris revealed a heartbreaking secret.
He didn't even know how to tell me. I remember he just bust out crying in the living room and told me a girl had called him and told him that she had a child for him. So he basically was messing with the girl before I left New Orleans, but he didn't think it was gonna be nothing like he got her pregnant. After that happened, we broke up.
Still, Chris wasn't ready to give up.
He came to my church and he proposed to me in front of my church. I kept saying, Chris, no, 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 please stop. Cause he's on a microphone saying my whole name, John Treese Yvonne Mims, would you please? I said yes.
John Treese immediately knew that was a mistake.
So now I'm kind of trying to find a way to tell him this is not what I want. Because when Chris get heartbroken, he gets so heartbroken. Cry 4 hours on my sofa, on my porch.
John Treese tells police that she stayed with Chris for a while. But by 2017, she'd had enough.
It was I had too much evidence that Chris wasn't gonna grow up no time soon. I feel like I'm raising Chris at this point. We both the same age, you should know better. I decided that I didn't want to go further in our relationship and I left Chris alone completely.
Shortly after that, John Treese met Idric. But Chris wasn't ready to move on.
Chris is in denial at this point. He thinks, okay, well, she's always been there, she'll always be there.
Chris was going crazy. He was calling my phone, talking about he hate me, I ruined his life. I just wasn't answering him.
However, ignoring Chris didn't make the problem go away.
He was calling everybody in my family. He's dragging for me on social media.
Instead of confronting Chris, Idric decided to take a more charitable approach.
Idric definitely seems like a compassionate person. He had the insight to see that Chris was hurting at the time, and he does not want to hurt anybody.
Right before Thanksgiving, me and the kids and Idric went to church. And Chris was at church, and Idric was like, I feel so bad for Chris. So when we left church, Idric told me to check on Chris. I called him and checked on him, and I thought that was gonna be the end of it. He seemed really happy to see me. He thought that, we could be friends.
Now, John Treese thinks that was another mistake.
I told the detective, I just want to put it out there. If it could be him, find out what's going on for me, please.
The first thing I did, I wanted to see the social media myself. I wanted to see exactly what she was talking about. I'll be honest, looking at his page, he seemed like a real church-going guy. I was kind of on the fence, whether is this guy involved or do we just have the wrong person?
Then, investigators find something that changes their minds. One of Chris's posts is a video of him practicing at a gun range.
Really didn't look like he knew what he was doing. It really looked like he was kind of out of his place. Just maybe, it was weird. That immediately was a red flag for me.
Monica. And God says to me, Alicia, you have to let him go. He wants to leave.
On the morning of January 10th, the family decides to take him off life support.
They came and spoke with me about being an organ donor. I said he already is an organ donor. So they had me to sign papers to release of his organs and so forth. And from that point, we went in the room and prayed. I talked with him, gave him a hug, gave him a kiss, and told him I'll see him on the other side.
My mama came in the room on the phone and she was like, Tree, let me talk to you. He fought a good fight. I was like, what you mean he fought? That's a past tense statement. and they told me he didn't make it. I was just in a state of disbelief and awe. And I couldn't get words to come out.
For investigators, the case has now become a homicide. And on January 11th, they speak to the man they believe is responsible.
I asked John Treese if she had a phone number on Christopher. I gave him a call. Honestly, it was just a blind call. Hey man, how you doing? I'm Detective Johnson. Would you mind coming down to speak with me? Surprisingly, he immediately said, yeah, I'll come down, which kind of gave me a little indication he knows what's going on. When Christopher arrived at my office, he arrived there with his mom. She walked to me and said, look, I'm scared for my son. I told her, just give me a second, let me speak to Christopher by himself, and I'll come back and talk to you. When Christopher agreed to come into the interview room with me, we sat down. First thing I did, I introduced myself. And then I read off our Miranda rights form. I asked him if he knew why he was here. He said yes. He said that people were saying he had something to do with John Treese's boyfriend getting killed.
But Chris claims he couldn't have shot Eindrick because he was with a dancer he met online.
He said, I met a girl the day before named Candy. I met her on Instagram and she wanted to hook up with me that day, which was kind of weird to me because this shooting happened at 6 o'clock in the morning. He seemed really nervous. He was sweating, he was stuttering while he was talking, fidgeting with his hands. All signs that any seasoned detective would know is you're most likely being untruthful about something, you're hiding something.
To test Chris, Detective Johnson leads him to believe they have evidence that he's lying.
I told him, I said, hey man, look, I have surveillance video from the area. I saw you there. I know you're involved with it. Come clean. And I'm staring at him. We got quiet for a little while. You hear the little clock in the corner just tick, 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 ticking away.
And then, after what seems an eternity,
he looked down. He looked back up and he was like, I did it. I killed him.
When Detective Johnson asks him to explain further, Chris suddenly goes quiet. So, the detective tries a different tactic.
I asked him if he would mind if I bring his mom in. He said yes. I walked the mom in, and she tells me about people threatening her son and all these things that were going on. I looked at her, I said, look, we're here, you're in the police station, but you don't need to take any of this that we talk about and tell it to the world. You don't need to do that.
And so he went on and he confessed it to his moms, what he had done.
Chris says he took a cab to John Treese's house the morning of January 8th and waited, hiding outside. And when he saw Eindrick leave for work, he fired, missing the first few times.
He told me he shot the victim in the head. He had one single gunshot wound. By him having that information, I knew he was the person, because nobody else should know that. His mom, she's just over there just looking. She almost has a blank stare on her face because I don't think she was ready for what she was hearing also. At that time, I authored an arrest warrant. He was placed under arrest.
We thought it was a slam dunk. He goes to prison, you know, and serve his time and just move on in life.
But there's a major problem for the prosecution.
The issue was that confession was tainted. The defense counsel had taken writs up to the Fourth Circuit and then ultimately to the Supreme Court, saying that some of the things that the detective on the case had said in the interrogation room had mitigated the Miranda warnings. And the Miranda warnings being, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
The defense argues that the detective suggested to Christopher and his mother that what they said in the interrogation room was confidential.
It goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they threw it out.
The statement was tossed out because they believed that I gave him the impression that whatever he tells me is not going to go to court. That's not what I said. When his mother walked in, she was scared. She was scared for her son. I said, look, what we talk about is not for you to go tell the world. Then I turned back to Christopher, who was already Mirandized and understood he was in a police station talking to a detective, a homicide detective.
But without further evidence, prosecutors know there's a good chance Christopher will go free.
We don't have anything besides this confession from this defendant and a lot of what we call circumstantial evidence. What is it conclusively is saying he did it for sure. So I'm walking into a case that's more or less dead on arrival.
In addition to the inadmissible confession, legal wrangling that upsets Eidrich's family and the revelation of a surprise motive means the drama of this story is far from over. Despite having Christopher Alexander's confession ruled inadmissible, prosecutors assure Eidrich Brister's family they're not giving up.
I try to be as empathetic as I possibly can with surviving family members because they are going through the worst experience of their life. And I promise them I'm going to do everything I possibly can to see the case through to the end, no matter what. The Supreme Court had suppressed Christopher Alexander's confession, but they had suppressed it after Detective Rael Johnson was trying to alleviate the mom's concern, but what Alexander said before was all admissible, right? So we have all that part of his statement to work with. He made this story up that he was in the area because he was going to meet a stripper that he had met on Instagram. However, there's no evidence of that anywhere in his phone, right? Anywhere on his Instagram. So we can shoot holes in that.
My next step was go over to the cab company and speak with them. That morning, maybe at like 5:45, a little bit before 6 o'clock, he called a cab ride over to the location. The interesting thing is that he gave the location that is directly behind the house where the murder happened. He gave the exact address, he just gave a different street.
But it's still not the hard evidence prosecutors are looking for.
You know, we had a case that was circumstantial. We could put him near the scene, but we didn't have enough really to link him beyond a reasonable doubt to the murder.
The family, you know, they were distraught, and they were at a point of desperation where, you know, they wound up talking to, you know, the media about what occurred, and they were upset with me. And guess what? I can't even blame them.
2 years passed with no further movement on the case, leaving the prosecution team little choice but to attempt a plea bargain.
It was my hope, rather than go into a trial where we've got a very, very low chance of winning, that we come to some sort of terms on a reconciliation. And so I approached the new defense counsel with that idea. He would admit guilt, admit that he did this, and pleaded the crime of manslaughter.
Manslaughter comes in when it's what? Some crime of passion, you know, some relationship just went bad, an argument or something of that nature. So in that situation, the mitigating factor is, hey, let's try to get a manslaughter, and then the judge can sentence him in this state from 0 to 40 years, and not life.
But Eidrich's family sees it as a betrayal.
I would not allow it. I mean, he admitted doing it. That wasn't right. So I was in their office almost every week.
In 2021, the family's persistence pays off when the newly elected district attorney instructs prosecutors to drop the plea bargain and start over.
I close all the loops with Detective Johnson. We check off every lead has been run down, every possible avenue of evidence has been uncovered.
We did a search warrant for his social media. At that time, we were able to get back all of the conversations that they were having. And also John Tree, she provided us with some of the conversations because she had access to it.
You could see through the fall, I guess, of 2017, right? As they kind of escalate, he goes from just, I'm sorry, I love you, I want to get back together with you, to all caps, to why are you doing this to me? Why are you ripping out my heart?
One series of messages reveals a bombshell of a motive.
I slept with Chris that November of 2017. And I told Eidrich. He told me he knew. He said he thought it would happen multiple times before I actually would be honest and tell him. But this was already at the time I stopped answering Chris messages.
Chris is desperate. He feels like he needs John Treese. He's not going to survive without John Treese.
If Chris was hoping Idric would kick John Treese out, he was disappointed.
Idric told me, like, we gonna be good and everything gonna be fine.
There was only one way Chris could get her back.
I think this is the point when he decided he was going to kill Idric Brister. Not because he hated Idric Brister, but because he loved John Treese Mims.
Kirk and Tammy Franklin Hope. In 2022, more than 4 years after Idric Brister was murdered, the case finally makes it to trial. Prosecutors still don't have any physical evidence proving Christopher Alexander pulled the trigger. But they're hoping circumstantial evidence and testimony from John Treese Mims will be enough to sway the jury.
I'm extremely scared, but I know I gotta do it. I know I gotta get past this. I gotta get it done. Idric was my strength. When I got there, I saw Idric's daddy, Arthur, and Alicia. I wanted to hug them, but they told us we couldn't really talk to each other. They set me in a room right outside the courtroom, and I saw Chris. He looked me in my eyes like, I just still love you to death, I don't care. No remorse in his eyes. And it made me sick to my stomach because you really a devil. Like, you really evil. You done went all these years and ain't find no type of peace within yourself. You don't want to say sorry.
During the trial, John Treese got up there, and I'll be honest with you, that was very emotional to see her up there speaking about, what occurred. Never in her wildest thoughts thought that Christopher would do something like this.
And I broke down on a stand. Like, I went through a couple of years of trying to forget all of that and just keeping my good memories with Idric in my head. But it brought me back to what I went through.
John Treese tells the jury about her tumultuous relationship with Chris and his escalating anger when she wouldn't take him back.
He was still in love with her, but she didn't want to be with him anymore. He was begging her, he was pleading her to be with her.
But she's not responding, and it seems like she's finally moved on with her life. She's with a better man, somebody that's more responsible, and reciprocating the love and support that she gives. So Chris then decides, okay, well, I'll show you how much of a man I really am. I'm not a child. I'm gonna go and get a gun, and I'm gonna show you what I really can do, because now I feel disrespected.
Our motive was probably the strongest aspect of this case. Who in the world could possibly want to kill Idric Brister? And that is a small number of people, right? And I think it's so small that there's really only one person.
But the defense argues none of it proves Chris murdered Idric Brister.
The first thing you always tell your clients is, you don't have to prove anything or disprove anything. The state must prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This is what we call circumstantial evidence, right? And the law says that must exclude every other reasonable hypothesis of innocence.
The defense believes the state hasn't met that burden of proof.
His lawyer had him gassed up that he was about to get out of here and he was going scot-free. But in my heart and from all the work that I've done, I knew this guy was guilty, no doubt. Now, my thing was to see if the jury was going to side with me also.
The jury deliberates for less than 3 hours before delivering their verdict.
All 12 jurors found him guilty of second-degree murder.
I'm gonna tell you, that was a weight off my chest because I felt like I let that family down with what happened with the piece of that statement that got thrown out. This is what I love to do, and I love to be able to give families closure.
Christopher Alexander is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for the loved ones of Idric Brister, the victory is bittersweet.
It's a love triangle case that ends in the worst possible way because both these young men are gone from society now, right? Idric to never return, and Christopher Alexander also to never return from jail. So it was an absolute tragedy in all parts, and John Treese, is there at the middle of it all.
It's still just so heartbreaking. Losing me, I don't feel like was worth you throwing your whole life away. You took somebody away from their family, away from their friends, an amazing person, away from me, away from my children, an unforgettable person who didn't deserve that at all.
I believe he's still here. He hears me, he knows me. I talk to him. He taught me the core and essence of what we're really here for, and as other people, and to love them where they are until they get to where you need them to be.
It gives me a great joy to see all the work that my son has done. So there was 5 people that received organs, but if you was at the funeral, it was more than 5 lives that he saved.
I definitely feel like Audric was sent in my life to implement change. I became a better parent, a better friend, a better sibling. I'm more forgiving, empathetic, and all these things are things he taught me when he was here.